Plug in, Gills fans. Welcome back to episode 6 of Gills in the Pub. As you can see, I am joined by regular guests for this series, Jack and Reece. Boys, are you both well, aside from essentially what we're going to have to talk about for the next hour or so?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, all good, mate. Thanks.
Good. Appreciate you coming on again, as always. I think there's been quite a clamour for us to get back together for a few weeks now, and we kept sort of putting it off. But it's come to a point where we have to sit down and chat about what's going on at the football club, both on and off the pitch. There's plenty to get through. Last episode we did was July. I was certainly the most optimistic of the three of us. That tends to be the rule, which is fine. I think Jack's going to gloat because he said that he thought we could get dragged into a relegation battle, but I'm sure he'll mention that in a little while.
I'm not going to gloat, mate. I don't take any solace in where we are.
Nothing to gloat about, unfortunately, is there? And I just think quickly yesterday, the fact that with about 10 minutes to go, and I know you were there, Reece, Gills fans erupting because we've had a shot on target or we've got a cross into the box. I think I said on my Matchday Live, if you don't laugh, then you cry. But that summed us up perfectly, sadly, and that's where we are as a football club. 6 goals in 17 league matches. Let's talk about Northampton at home yesterday. That will be me and Reece because I don't think Jack went. He certainly made the right call. Same old problems, wasn't it, Reece?
Yeah, it's been the story of the season. I mean, I think a lot of people I was reading on social media afterwards were saying it was a dreadful performance. I don't think I'd go that extreme, to be honest. You know,
No.
Northampton are a decent side for this level. They've got better players than we have. We have to accept that. And to be honest, I thought about that, and obviously we used 2 goalkeepers yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually recall either of them having to make a save. It's just the case is that, yeah, it's just being clinical in the 2 penalty boxes where we ask our defenders to do too much because they go out every week knowing for us to win a game they have to keep a clean sheet. It's a lot of pressure. And then, yeah, I think Northampton's second goal was a fine example of everything we're not. It's decent service from a wide area and a forward who's anticipating on the move in the box to tap it in. We don't score goals like that, and there must be a reason why.
Yeah,
we don't score goals per se, let alone like that.
Yeah, there is that as well. That's a very fair point, unfortunately. I think I said to someone today, I was talking when I was playing football, and I just said, God bless the Carabao Cup, because otherwise this season would just be absolutely horrific, more so than it is already. But yeah, I totally agree, Reece. I tweeted at half-time and at full-time, there wasn't a lot in the game. I don't think I've seen a team this season. I thought, yeah, they're really, really good for the level. I don't think there has been one. Stevenage come down, and I thought we more than competed. Mansfield, you could probably say we're a good side, but we gave them a start again. Our issue is rinse and repeat. We start all right. We're in games. We then give away a soft goal. Will Wright was the culprit yesterday, trying to play through into midfield and didn't even get it past the centre forward. And then we had a go, sort of, in terms of, how much of a go do we have, given our scoring record. Second half then followed the same pattern. We had plenty of the ball first 15, 20 minutes. They caught us on the counter-attack and scored a really good second. And from then it was essentially game over. Jack, I know you've not been a lot, but you obviously keep an eye on it over social media. There's nothing, is there, that says to fans, come back and watch us? Literally nothing at all.
No,
in terms of performances.
Well, I wouldn't say so, mate. Obviously, I'm not going, not because of the football, but for other reasons, as has been stated. But just picking up on your point a second ago that you said around the fact that no one's actually been that decent. That's even worse when you think about it, really, because, in League One, you could make the argument that we did get played off the park a couple of times by good clubs, good budgets, and we won't go over last season, but this season, I've been to a few away games, been to Carlisle amongst others, and we're just not in the game at all, really. Or we've broadly got possession of the ball occasionally, but we don't seem to ever look like we're ever going to score, which has been backed up in the figures. But like I say, very, very worrying that none of these teams particularly look that good, and we're sat second bottom of the division. It just makes for very depressing reading, to be honest. At least if teams were playing us off the park and you could go, oh, the standard was decent, then there's an element of, well, still be disappointed, but I think it makes it worse, to be honest.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying because, yeah, last season, again, we don't want to harp on about it too much. This is depressing enough as it is, but you had your Sunderlands, you've got your Portsmouths, your Charltons, your Wigans. They've been in League One. They've got huge budgets compared to us, and we're never going to compete with them regardless of investment, and we'll get onto that a little later in the episode. But I think you're right, because the teams look fairly average, and the fact that we are in a relegation battle for the second campaign in a row is deeply concerning, isn't it, Reece?
Yeah, and like you said at the start, we did. But obviously, Jack sort of alluded to it at the time, but I think he said it could happen, but neither of the three of us were outright expecting that we'd get towards Christmas and we would be in. And I don't think it's the fact that we're third bottom from the league; it's the figures behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the goal scoring record has to be threatening. If this carries on, being the worst season goal scoring wise that any club has ever had at this level of football, it's that bad. And the problem is that we've still got, obviously the World Cup doesn't stop football for us. We've still got to keep playing until January. There's still a lot of games to play where before we can try and do anything to improve this squad, there's still a lot of football to be played. And it's quite concerning that, you know, I said yesterday, with this current set of players, I couldn't pick a single 11 in a single system that would give me any confidence that we're going to go and score more than once in a game. I just cannot see it, which is deeply concerning.
It is, and the fact that Neil Harris has tried how many systems in this season alone. He came in last season and he said, I'm going to have to play a back three, a back five because of personnel, and I'm working with someone else's mess and someone else's tools. And everyone went, yeah, that's fine. Got no issue with that at all. He's turned up. He had, 7 hours of a transfer window? First thing he did was watch his captain walk out the door. But there was an interview where he said, my strikers will score goals. I think, and he was alluding to Verdane Oliver at the time. Verdane obviously since moved on and definitely made the right choice, although he can't get in the side at Bradford at the moment because of the form of Andy Cook. But he's gone to a team that's, you know, top 5, top 6 in this division and seriously competing. We're in games per se, but when you don't score goals, one goal essentially puts you out of the game. And that's a massive, massive worry, because if you can score 2 or 3, and how many times have we seen people on Twitter in recent weeks go, I'd rather have a proper go and play with the handbrake off and lose 3-2. Or, you know, we lose 1, we win 1. You're picking up 1.5 points per game then. We're just sleepwalking and drawing our way to relegation. That's what it feels like.
Just to go back to Reece's point, you know, it's all well and good saying or looking at it and going, well, where we are in the table. But if I look back to Hessenthaler when we was in League Two, I think first season in League Two, I think around this time, I think we lost 7-4 in one of the games, didn't we, against Accrington? We were around 20th, 21st, but I don't think anyone at that time thought we'd stay in that position. And then we went on a big winning run. Of course, we had a better team, probably a better budget, but there was hope then because we were scoring goals. I think to your point, 6 goals in 17 games. I think one of them has been from open play, which is appalling. And it makes it even worse when Harris is an ex-striker, to be honest. And if we carry on with that figure, I worked it out earlier, over the course of the season.
We barely get to 20, do we?
16 based on the amount of games gone and goals scored. So, I mean, even if we pick that up a little bit, I think we're going to maximum score 40, which is absolute pie in the sky at the moment.
It is,
but
yeah.
even that's horrendous. It's crazy. This is the worst. I didn't start going to Gills until 94, 95. My first game was the Arsenal Centenary friendly. So, and I don't remember that season particularly well. I was 6. So I've got no real reference point to a very bad time for the club, shall we say. But This is the worst season I've ever known, the worst team I've ever known. And people I know who went in the early 90s, that went to the 88-89 season, all agree with that, or they're the ones that have come up with that sentiment, to be honest, and I'll go along with it.
There's nothing that makes you disagree, is there, Reece?
No, nothing. So obviously, I didn't start going until 2003. So I'm one of these unfortunate people that I started going to Gills when we was at the height of our history, sitting in the Championship. So in my lifetime, I've just seen us progressively get worse and worse.
Well done on sticking with us, mate, to be fair.
Yeah, mine was slightly before Jack. I think my first game was 89, but literally don't remember anything about it. My dad took me because it was local. Started going properly. Did the Halifax game, but again, it was a school trip. Didn't really sort of take in at the time the enormity of the occasion, even though it was full up and we won 2-0. That was great, but you look back now and you think, oh, blimey. But yeah, this is comfortably. And I'm not saying the players are awful. I'm not saying individually they're all poor players, but for some reason there's no chemistry. It's not working. And I know some people don't like stats. Some people do like stats, but you can't get away from the fact that we've scored 6 goals. So 1 every 3 in the league is absolutely horrific, however much you try and dress it up and make it.
There's no dressing it up at all, is there?
No.
And I think if you look back to the old days as well, even under, in the year we went into receivership and stuff like that, and the one before that, we had Chris Pike, we had Nicky Forster. So even though we were terrible, we did actually have a goal scorer. Whereas now, Mandron, we made the comment in the last chat that, or I did, that I thought he'd maybe get 10 goals, but with someone next to him that was a fox in the box. And we never ended up signing that particular person that I thought would sit alongside him. So asking him to lead the line with his stats in the past, I think we were always going to maybe sleepwalk towards this. But I can be a little bit glass half empty when it comes to signings at time. And I like to be a bit more realistic than others, I guess. But even I didn't think it would be this bad. And I said it on Twitter yesterday, and some people don't like hearing this. But I think Harris is getting off very lightly with the fan base, given how badly. I don't know if we're touching on something we'll go on to a little bit later, mate. But I think he's getting off very lightly based on how we are doing. I'm the first person to slate Scally, but this is his team. The budget may be poor, but I don't believe it's a second bottom of the League Two budget. He had a bit of a free reign last year, and admittedly he deserved it, and he did well. But I think this season is it's obviously on Scally, but he has to take a lot of culpability for where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think over the last sort of 5-6 weeks, it's been more and more prevalent on social media. Would you agree, Reece, that Neil Harris is suddenly coming into the equation in terms of whom's to blame? And yes, we know Paul Scally, and we'll get onto it because it's the next subject to discuss. But he's admitted, not to defend the bloke, but he's admitted he can't take us any further. He can't do it without help. I don't agree with the fact that he's just essentially gone into hiding and gone AWOL is the correct way to do it. So let's talk about Paul Scally. Reece, there was a statement that came out at the start of August announcing that he was taking a backward step and that Paul Fisher was going to come in and run the club on a day-to-day basis. I think on the Saturday we went and beat Rochdale. The following Tuesday we scored 2 goals in a game and beat Wimbledon in the EFL Cup. And Paul Fisher was probably thinking, "What's the issue here? This is it's a walk in the park. This chairman malarkey." I think he's now realising potentially what state we're in behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'd say so. And the cynics among us would suggest that Scally has finally realised what a mess it's getting into under his reign, and has decided to try and make it out as if he's got absolutely no part of it by moving as far away from the club as he can just before the season starts. But obviously, on the face of it, from a fan's point of view, a lot of people are wanting him to move on, have been for some time. So it was kind of a welcome announcement, but also the realism had to be there that as of today, still, he is the owner of the football club. He essentially calls the shots. And this is where obviously we'll come on to it a bit later with Harris as well, where people talk about sacking him. Again, people need to realise there's financials involved in every decision the club makes. And at the moment, without any clear guidance going forward, with Scally, wherever he is, not really involved in the running of the football club, I think it is just going to be status quo until we get some sort of update on what is actually going on. Because I know obviously the club can't say too much, but I do think that probably we should have been given a bit more transparency on what actually is going on than what we have been at the moment.
Potentially, and that's always been an issue with Paul Scally, unfortunately, because as soon as he tries to be transparent and gets asked questions that he's uncomfortable with, he gets very defensive and starts lashing out at people. Jack, what did you make of it when the statement first came out? Again, I'm guessing it's along similar lines to myself and Reece, the fact that, yes, it was good that it was maybe the first small steps to Paul Scally departing, because I think it's clear now that all 3 of us are definitely in Paul Scally out. Not because we hate Paul Scally, but just for the good of our football club more than anything else.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, I suppose I want him to leave the club. I want him to sell the club, which appears to hopefully be happening. I think there's an element of me that was happy. There was an element of me that was quite cynical about it, because it felt like the first proper time that he's really come under pressure he's gone mentally wandering. You know, I don't want to slate the guy too much in that regard, but it feels like he's just thrown the towel in very easily. But to a degree, I guess I don't blame him because of the pressure he's coming under, which I think is rightfully so. I would just say with regards to Fisher that I don't feel personally like he's got any real say. I think he's doing superficial stuff that's very welcome. You know, putting BT Sport in the factory, for instance, little things like that are obvious things that were just tin pot that we didn't have, and he's trying
Still no
his best.
self-service pumps though.
Well, let's hope that comes in with the new owner, shall we say? I welcome what Fisher's doing, and I like the bloke. But I get the feeling, as Reece says, it's the status quo until something else transpires. I think if we stay the way we are, and we don't end up, the sale doesn't go through, you know, if it's happening or not. I think with the way we are right now, even with January, I think we'll go down.
It's a big statement 20 minutes into the episode. Reece, might as well ask the question then. Let's take out the takeover talk, because we will get onto that in more detail if we can. With this group of players, with no real investment in January. I mean, we've had January transfer windows. We go back 3 years to 2019, and we was getting announcement after announcement, and there was people tweeting the lights are still on. But let's be honest, we ended up with 5, and probably one of them was half decent, and the rest were an absolute crock of, you know, I'm talking about Leonardo Da Silva Lopez probably was the best of that bunch. We had Billy King, who I think played about 20 minutes. Tarvon Campbell the same. Ricky Holmes didn't even bother. Graham Burke, I think, might have been the other one. I think I've done well to remember all 5. I knew who they were rather than remember any sort of memorable performances. But without a substantial transfer window, do you agree with Jack's sentiments that we really are in that much trouble? There's no other way to look at it, is there, really? Because, again, it keeps coming back to this 6 goals scored in the league. You can't get away from it.
No, you can't win a game without scoring a goal is the root cause. And like Jack says, we are relying on essentially a defender's set plays to score goals at the moment, which isn't sustainable over 10 games, let alone a 46-game season. So, yeah, we can't get away from it. If this carries on and we don't improve the squad, we are in serious danger of losing our place in the league. I mean, the only hope I am clinging on to at the moment is, despite all the nonsense at the top end of the pitch, our defensive record is actually okay. And to be fair, I think even those that are sort of siding against Harris now would agree that generally in his reign, defensively, we have been all right. I think Northampton have let more goals in than we had before yesterday, and obviously they're in the top 7. So, but it's just a case of can we find
more than double what we've scored? That was a tweet I saw last night. Just when it could get more depressing. Yeah,
it's then I can't go against what I said 10 minutes ago. That do I see any system or any 11 with this set of players that makes me think we can score twice in a game? And I have to be honest, I don't. So unless we're going to keep another 15 clean sheets between now and the end of the season, which is a massive ask on our set of defenders, then yeah, we are in big trouble. That's for sure.
Don't get me wrong, right? I think if you put it, Dom put it quite well on Twitter yesterday. If you put it in the order of balance, it's he thinks chairman, manager, players. You know, the players are only so good as the budget, I guess, that you're given, and the manager that brings them in, and the manager's only so good as the chairman that affords him a budget to work with. But as I alluded to earlier, there's no way, in my opinion, we have a second from bottom budget in this division, and there will be other teams out there with a much better budget than us. You know, I've been very patient with Harris. I think he deserved it. You know, last season he was excellent, and he had a lot of goodwill. And he's very, very lucky, as I said earlier, that we're in a situation where most people blame Scally, which I would say is rightfully so. But there's obviously you've kind of said otherwise, Reece, really, but I don't think if this takeover happens, that with the confidence he probably has right now, and the way the players probably potentially feel about his methods, I don't think even with a takeover and funds to spend, that he'd do particularly much better. I think it's one of those where if you're at a company or a job where things just keep going wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong, even if you get some sort of upturn that helps boost you, I just don't think it would be enough to warrant him potentially staying long term. It's a bold statement. I'm not saying Harris out like others are, but I believe that should be part of the conversation when others think it shouldn't at all.
So what I was going to say, we've had this chat, and I did a vote on Twitter. Is Neil Harris still the right man? And again, we're a football club that's got so many other contributing factors. It's not just the fact that, like you've said, Jack, and Reece has alluded to it as well. If he'd been given a couple of 100,000 and we'd be in this position, then 100% everyone would be saying he's got to go. Some people are saying if this was 80 Pennock, Steve Lovell, they'd be saying he's got to go. I said, and this was a bold statement that I've regretted more and more over the last few months. I think I said it on here, and I said it on the Lower League Look, which is a League Two podcast. I said I thought we had the best manager for League Two. We're some way off that at the moment, unfortunately. Is the fact that Neil Harris hasn't managed at this level potentially causing us a big problem? Reece?
It's a really difficult one to really determine one way or the other. It could be a factor. But then also there was quite sort of when we did the episode back in the summer, we spoke quite promisingly about quite a few of the players as well that come in. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't materialised. And I think, obviously, at the end of the day, responsibility does fall on Harris's shoulders as the manager. But I do also think that we believe that some of these players, maybe not all of them, but some of them are capable of more and need to be doing more, because at the end of the day, Harris can't play the game for the players. And I think yesterday's game was a good example. That actually, in the first half yesterday, I thought by our standards, it was quite an open first half for a game yesterday. And in the first half alone, there was 4 or 5 times where we worked the ball out to Adelakun really, really well. And he picked the ball up 1v1 with a fullback with time and space. And the decision-making is just terrible. And that is... Harris can't make the decisions for the players when they're on the pitch. He doesn't tell Will Wright to pass a suicide pass into their forward like that. So it is a bit... But, you know, at the end of the day... No manager could complain if they're sacked third bottom of the division. Is the reality. I still would stick with him for now, and I've just because we've said this, whether it was on here or sort of amongst ourselves at the time, that him taking this job at the time he did in the position we were in made very little sense. So part of me wonders is if part of him even agreeing to take this job was he was told by Scally, it's a bit of a mess. There is something on the horizon that we're working on. The first year might be a bit ropey, so stick with it, and then we'll see. Because I agree with Jack, we've not got a third bottom budget. True. However, how much of this budget is taken up by players like Aymer, McDonnell, Lee, Reeve, Tatonda, who Harris has been stuck with from the previous reign? So while I don't think the budget is bottom 3, in terms of Harry's having to sign 17 players in the summer, how much budget did he actually have left over from what was already here to do that? We'll never know. I
think also, like you've obviously alluded to the fact that we all said that we thought it was a fairly decent players we brought in. I don't think any of us thought they were amazing. I think I made the point that, you know, that there was an element of either the clubs that they left thought that they were good players, or, you know, there was factors as to why they weren't particularly great, but all of them had some sort of tick that was decent. I think would be what I would say. The thing that I said, and we all said, I think, really, is that we felt that another striker was needed. As I pointed out earlier, Mandron isn't going to do this on his own. I don't think he's got it in him, aside from great goal the other day. And I you know, tweeted Paul Fisher on the last day of the transfer window and just said, look, get this right. Let's get a striker in. Let's not get some young defender in either on loan, which we ended up doing, who's proved to be useless. Get a striker in to help. It was the obvious glaring omission from the squad, I would say. You know, we've got Scott Kashket, who's effectively a second striker winger, so he's not really an out-and-out striker. We've got Mandron, who's kind of a target man and never scores more than 10 a season. And we've got Lewis Walker, who's played in Serie D. So it was obvious to me, I thought, that we needed another striker. Obviously, we missed out on Harry Smith, it would appear. But even then, I'd argue, as much as I thought he would have been a good signing in the summer, I thought he would have been the kind of like for like, as you know, with Mandron, you know, you might have signed him over Mandron potentially as a first choice. So, but then are you guys going more than me at the moment in terms of home games? Anyway, I'm going Saturday, so I can let you guys know the answer to this question. But would you say the strikers are performing poorly, or would you say that they're getting absolutely no service, or is it a bit of both?
I'd say it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like I say, we got into good positions yesterday with Adelicum 3 or 4 times. Not once did the ball find its way into the penalty area. And I think Mandron's goal in midweek was a good example that if we do find the service, we have got someone that can get his head on it and can put it in the net. So I'd be inclined to say, I'd probably say 60-40 towards the service being poor, but I also don't think the forwards are good enough. But it's interesting in terms of the Harry Smith thing, because I heard that it wasn't him. We'd agreed on deadline day who's the guy at Exeter? Stansfield?
Jay Stansfield.
I was led to believe it was him, and then
that
Exeter
has been
come in
mentioned
last
on
minute.
Twitter over the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Was it really interesting?
Yeah.
Which then makes sense.
Which made loads of sense.
Back there because he's gone back there because
his
dad was there as a bit of a cult hero before he sadly passed away with cancer, I think it was. So again, we shall never know for sure, but we missed out on a striker that surely would have
that would have been a good one. That would have been a good one, to be fair. Although I said at the time, I don't get why we didn't have a plan B. You know, if you miss out on the first one, surely you've got others on the list. You know, to me, it seemed obvious that we didn't have enough firepower up front. Like we always felt that a fox in the box would have been signed, like Ollie Affey maybe from Millwall or someone like that. But I think just to go back to what we said about Harris, if this takeover doesn't happen, I think the long and short of it is it's all well and good me saying I think he's on thin ice, but all the while this takeover doesn't happen, I don't think we can afford to get rid of him. To be honest,
No.
His contract's until the end of next season. I just can't see it. I just can't see us doing it, especially when we're potentially in the throes of a takeover. You'd think we'd want to keep outlays of money down as much as possible before that goes through, if it's going to happen.
That's the big question at the moment, isn't it? That's the big word, is if. There are rumours, and have been going around for a few weeks now, that an American business owner, consortium, however you want to label it, have potentially made a bid. I think it's anything from the bid's gone in to it's gone to the EFL to it's halfway along the ratification process with the EFL. Again, it's all just conjecture at the moment until the club come out and confirm something. And to be fair, I can understand them not saying anything because our fan base has a meltdown when we miss out on a striker. You can only imagine the carnage on social media if we said that we was in the throes of a takeover and then it all fell through. I think people might commit Harry Carey on certain individuals, but it's not really the subject that can be discussed openly. I don't think personally. You two might have a slightly different opinion. I know Reece said there could have been a bit more transparency. But Neil Harris has. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, but I think they've kind of the statement that was put out the other day on Kent Online. People went, "Oh, well, that's the end of that. Then that's not happening." To me, that wasn't a denial, but it wasn't an acceptance of what's happening. I think for me, that was a read between the lines. And
it's almost like they're trying to give us information, but without giving us information. If that makes sense, that's how I've read it.
Yeah.
The one that for me that was very pertinent was a couple of weeks ago, and Neil Harris got asked directly.
Yeah.
There's rumours of a takeover, and he'd been a takeover, sorry, and he'd been talking quite freely about tactics and players and games. And all of a sudden, he stopped and he hesitated and he looked up, as almost as if he was looking for guidance at someone behind a camera, as if to say, "How much can I say? How much can I, digress about this subject?" And then the most recent one was in the week where he's gone out and said, "We're in a dark place. We need help, and hopefully." Brighter times are on the horizon. I think was
he said something else. I think yesterday, mate, as well. That was even more telling. I can't remember the exact words.
I've not had a chance to watch yesterday's. I've not managed to put myself through it yet.
I think the one I've seen, it might not be from yesterday. I don't know, but it was on the lines of changes are afoot. So it's broadly similar to Tuesday, but okay. I think there's people that are in the know that we know that we get information from every now and again. But I think the fact that Harris has openly kind of, I wouldn't say put his foot in it, but he's kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, to me suggests it's going to happen. Well, I say it's going to happen. It never happens until, it's gone through. My fear is that maybe, Scally's quite a hard-nosed negotiator over the years. We've should have let. I've said openly in past episodes we should have let players go for at different times. Dak, we got 750 grand for him, which was criminal when we was offered more previously.
I was talking about him today in the pub after football. I said, we're going to be the only club that's got a 10 or 20% sell-on fee, and he's going to leave on a free transfer now, because he can't get the side at Blackburn.
No,
that'd just be very Gills, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, not our fault. He's done 2 cruciates, to be fair.
No, I get that. Yeah, and then obviously John Dove Thomason don't fancy him at all. But
we don't need the money now with Olivia Atwood spending a day in the jungle for £500,000, I think. But
yeah, not bad, was it? To be fair,
no, it wasn't bad at all. But it's I think the takeover hopefully will happen. I think we're crying out for it, to be honest. It's long overdue. I think genuinely for me, I know a lot of people say better the devil you know, but I think we've got to that point now that even people who were Scally in, some pretty prominent people we know that are, for instance, on your group, Matt, I won't name names, but even they're saying, yeah, fair enough, this needs to happen now. So for me, I think anyone that was on the fence or who was Scally in is now not Scally out, to the same level as other people, but they are in agreement that this needs to happen. And I think although there is, like we said, the better the devil you know, and there's that worry of someone coming in and asset stripping us, I think we've got to the point now where we just need to take a chance. It's the risk or the upside for me outweighs the risk now, because the
reward's bigger, isn't it? I think the reward's a lot bigger than the risk. Yeah, I know. Obviously, we don't want some fly-by-night cowboy coming in and absolutely stripping us and building flats on it, and I get that entirely. And Steve Dale Berry comes to mind in recent seasons, but
we need this.
It's not getting better in the current situation, is it? This is
we need
we're
this.
Third bottom of League Two, not scoring goals, and I think almost everyone now is desperately clinging to the hope that this takeover does happen, because they can't see another way. Yeah, because they can't see another way out of it.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And I'm not expecting us to suddenly pull up trees. I've said this before. People in the past have openly said, we should be a championship club. And I've said, look, that's not something I'm saying we should be. For me, I just think, just to have some ambition. We're a laughing stock at the moment, frankly. Let's be honest. Brentford aside, I just want a bit of ambition, a bit of hope when it comes to a transfer window, that we're actually going to sign someone half decent, that we're going to score more than 6 goals this season. And I think just a united club. I think. I genuinely believe, and I'm saying this on camera, and I could be wrong, but I think thousands will return the first game back. Genuinely, I think I don't know what we're averaging at the moment, probably 4,000. I'm going to take a punt at. I think at least 7 will be there the first game that he's sold. If this chap Gallinson is the one that's been banded around, if it is him, I think thousands will return, and I hope that they would stay. But I think we'll be more of a united fan base. We just need this hope. We need it.
No, you're spot on, because Twitter's not fun. I'm at the point now where I tend to stay off Twitter on a Saturday night if it's another defeat, because you end up sadly in an argument with someone, and for every 9 people that you can have a meaningful discussion with, there's one idiot that just wants to slag you off. I'm targeted by a few because of what I do with the YouTube channel. I don't lose sleep over it. I'm 40 years of age at the end of the day, but you just have a chat like this. Everyone's got different opinions. We get that, but it's not fun, is it? Social media after another defeat, there's the Nillingham Football Club now, we're now called.
Or Neil Harris as well is being called. Yeah,
Neil's in the blood's been suggested to me as well. So something needs to change. Reece, you said, and I think Jack did as well, to be fair, he said he's not specifically in Harris out, but obviously he has to take some accountability. Coupled with the takeover talk, let's say it does happen, and you mentioned it already, we've got to get through the next 6 weeks with this group of players. Do you give Neil Harris the transfer window and then let him have the rest of the season before making a decision, potentially?
Yeah, I would. Partly because, like I said earlier, I have a sneaky suspicion that part of the whole reason why he come here was because this being on the agenda. I think obviously it's all paper talk, rumour, whatever. But back in the summer, sort of, we got made aware of names that it was believed Harris was going after. And to be fair, I think they were the right kind of player. When we talk about Smith, McCallum, Pierre, players like that. Obviously, you got Thompson last season. I think he would try and sign the right kind of player if the resources were there. Obviously, him then, if January comes and he gets that back in, he then has no excuse to keep us sitting third bottom of the league. And listen, we don't need to get to January, and we're not asking if this takeover does happen that the new owner is going to come in and spend £1 million in January. That's not what we need. We just need 2 or 3 decent League Two players at the top end of the pitch, because I think we can operate with the defenders we've got for the season, to be fair, if we can start scoring some goals. But yeah, I'm not saying I'm harassing because I think he's doing a great job at the moment. He isn't. I can't
No, he's not.
Paint that any other way. I just do not see an alternate option that would do an awful lot better. I know people will say it can't get much worse, which is true. But then I just look back to last season when the shambles were when Evans left and then Lovell took over, and then we started getting done by 7 at home. And that is the risk, is that where we are quite solid defensively at the moment, if someone comes in and tries to open us up, we might score a goal, but we could well let 4 and 5 in. In the end, it's still 0 points, isn't it, at the end of the day? So, yeah, on the basis of the takeover happens, I would trust him just about to stay for now.
I've put here, I'm not convinced we hire anyone better, but you kind of escape this form and dress it up as good, which is pretty much what you've just said there, Reece, to be honest. But I think for me, I don't know how to answer that question if you put it to me, mate. Really, I'm worried that if tactically that he's inept, because I'm sorry, I know we're a shambles, but you can't keep blaming Scally for where we are. As much as I would love to, I'm the most anti-Scally person in this, trio here. But it's your players. You knew what you were getting into. You knew the budget you had, and I worry that if we give him funds in January, if the takeover happens, that he'll waste them. And there's an element of me that thinks, well, like we all thought Evans wouldn't do a bad job last season. We thought we'd always be safe, and we got rid of him, and our fortunes took an upturn. Because, as I said, I think it doesn't matter how good you are on paper, if you start getting into a rut personally in a work situation, no matter what your job is, I think even if there's an upturn in fortunes, in this case, money to spend, I just don't know whether the players have lost confidence in him. They don't believe in his methods. He doesn't pick the same team more than once. He doesn't know his best formation. There's nothing to me that gives me confidence that he's going to turn this around.
No, and we mentioned this earlier in the episode, didn't we? We said that we're sort of a third of the way through the league game. We can exclude the cup competitions because that's not our bread and butter at the end of the day. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we've played 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, 4-4-2, 3-5-2, 3-4-1-2, 3-4-2-1. I know I'm getting into realms of very much tweaking a 3-5-2, but we've played a back three with 2 10s and a centre forward. We played it with 2 strikers and a number 10 in behind, and then 4. We played standard 4-4-2 with wingers and 2 central midfielders. None of them have worked.
No.
Are the players, and to get away from Neil Harris, because, and again, you made a good point about what Dom had put on Twitter. Well, I think he said 80% Scally, 15% Harris, 5% players. And again, it tumbles down, doesn't it? It filters down regarding what budget you have, how good your manager is. But to just go back to what you said, Reece and Jack, I know you've said you'd give him the transfer window and the rest of the season potentially if the takeover does happen. Jack's not so sure. But if these come in and they've got a few quid to spend, what's to say the new owner just goes, see you later, Neil. I'm going to go and get someone that's proven in the division above, say. I know we've gone championship manager, Neil Harris, and it's not really worked. But what's to say he could go out and say, I'm going to get someone out of their contract who's doing well in League One? That surely might be a viable option.
They might think, oh, Stevenage's manager's doing well.
I'll tell you who I would love, which would be a nice slap in the face to Scally as well. If we've got some money about us, whether it's possible, I don't know. I don't know if he'd want to do it at his age. And it could be complete pie in the sky, but I'd absolutely love Tony Pulis back.
I knew you was going to say it when you said it, slap Scally in the face.
But because but in the past, he'd never have taken it. To put Scally aside, it was nonsense for anyone to ever suggest it. But his last job was Sheffield Wednesday, was it? Who ended up getting relegated just after he left. And I don't know. I think he clearly could manage in the Championship or League One, but I think he'd find. If it were me and I were him, I'd see it as a nice romantic last job. potentially, but that's me being idealistic. But I think it's more possible than it ever has been, is what I would say. But it's very much, that's an ambitious one.
Better get messages to Jim Stannard and Leo Fortune West on Twitter and tell them to dust off the old boots then. Let's get the band back together.
Well, Leo would do better than this lot at the moment.
He wouldn't be much worse, would he, to be fair? Only time will tell, I think, is the best way to describe and sum that up. The takeover is only conjecture and rumour at the moment. Until we get something official, we have to just sit and suffer, because that's what it is. We've mentioned these players, so let's talk about them before we start wrapping this up. Summer signings, we spoke about them in the summer when they'd first arrived without actually kicking a ball in anger, and Jack's alluded to a couple of them. We've mentioned a few. I'm going to go through it in squad number order. Just quickly want to see what you boys think in terms of how successful they've been. Got injured yesterday, unfortunately. I think it was a dislocated shoulder, which is kind of ironic because I think Ashley Maynard Brewer's now fit, but Glenn Morris has he's got to be in the top 3, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been fine.
Yeah, from what I've seen, mate, he's had a lot of work to do and he's done it reasonably well.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. I think he's probably saved us more points than he's cost us. I think he had that little wobble a couple of months ago when he flapped at one at home to Grimsby, away to Grimsby, and then played a part in the penalty against
Mansfield.
Was it Mansfield when him and Minoga ran into each other? No, yes.
He saved it. Did he save it?
Yes, he did save it, and then we conceded 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I went to that Grimsby one, typical. The one where he has a howler on there.
Yep. And we did score a goal, though. So,
we scored 3, actually, although 2 of them were offside. We scored in the last minute and I went absolutely mental and then realised the flag had gone up, which
wasn't the first one in that goal was for a foul by Amar on the keeper. Apparently.
Yeah, that was never a foul.
No.
We've had little moments like that, admittedly, where I don't get me wrong, we're slating Harris here to a degree, but, they have not had the rub of the green in some games, and I have a lot of sympathy for the situation he's working under.
Yeah, I think it's got to be half a dozen goals disallowed this. I think Mandron's had 4 on his own, bless him. And then suddenly you're talking about a very different front man, but they're not given, so we're not. So we'll move on. Shea Alexander hasn't pulled up any trees, really, has he?
No. From what I've seen, Wimbledon, he was poor. He was the one who was at fault for the goal, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He looked all right. He's looked like a bloke that was released by Wimbledon.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I'd sum it up.
Looks like a player that we can afford at the moment, yeah. Will Wright, I think.
Flashes of brilliance. Got the stupid mistake in him like yesterday.
You can tell he's come up from non-league, I think would be the best way to sum it up. I remember, and you go back to that Wimbledon game, I think there was the first touch he had in that opening day of the season. The ball got played back to him, he's playing right back that day, and he had a touch, and then he had another touch, and the left winger closed him down, and all of a sudden the Wimbledon crowd got up, and he had an absolute nightmare that day after that. But yeah, dead balls, delivery. I think he looks better centrally though, doesn't he, Reece? I don't think he's a right back.
Yeah, I'd agree. But with Will, I at least see something we can work with.
Potential.
He does have moments a bit like yesterday, but also didn't expect to say this when we signed him. But yeah, he's our most creative player. So.
Yeah, that tells you all you need to know. Sean Williams, I think's been absolutely fine for a brilliant 36. Yeah.
Really good when he's played, but injured at times, which hasn't helped. I think we could have done with him in some games, to be honest, when he's not been on the pitch. Yeah,
I think he is definitely one of them players who you notice what he does when he's not there.
Yeah, definitely. We've got no one like him, to be honest, either.
Mika, Mandron, Reece, go.
He frustrates the life out of me.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think every centre forward that's ever played for Gills frustrates the life out of me. His goal record isn't great, but as we've alluded to, part of that could be down to the service or lack of that he gets. I think what frustrates me about him sometimes is that this was a bugbear I used to have with Eves as well. He spends an awful lot of time in wide areas of the pitch. And there's also a lot of times where I don't know if he's instructed to do it, or whether he just chooses not to. But when we do go long to him, he never really looks like he wants to compete to try and.
No.
I know. We said when we signed him that we don't expect him to be what Oliver was in the air, but he just seems to let centre backs come over the top of him and win it a lot, which I find quite frustrating. But you know, I think if we can get some decent wide players that will give him some service, he could be better. There's probably more potential in Mandron that we're not able to untap because of the players we've got around him, I would say.
My frustration, I mean, at Grimsby, for instance, even though the guy put the ball in the back of the net 3 times, technically, he's quite, I don't know if I'm doing a disservice here, but I feel he's quite lazy. Like, he doesn't bust a gut to get to a ball, whether it be on the ground, or he doesn't close defenders down. He doesn't try and compete in the areas where he says he's a bit of a luxury player. It almost seems when I hoped he would be our target man, like I said, next to a fox in the box, and expecting him to do that on his own. When you consider those attributes and what I've just said, is probably partly why we are where we are. You look at Lewis Walker; he's the opposite in terms of ability. I think Mandron's got miles more ability than Walker, but I think Walker actually does try and compete in the air. He does work hard. That you need to almost give the other player the other person's best attributes.
Yeah, we do this a lot. You could say if you could mix the best parts of both of them, you've got one hell of a centre forward. But if you did that, we probably couldn't afford him. Yeah. Who wants Haji Minoga?
Well, I've not seen him. I've not seen him play.
I've only seen him.
I don't think you
two.
About 12 minutes. I think that's about it.
I said on deadline day to Fisher on Twitter, rightly or wrongly, tweeting him saying, "Do not sign some cheap young lone defender that's never going to play." And we've literally done that. That's the best way to describe what's happened.
And obviously, there's mitigating circumstances. The red card has clearly not helped his cause, and he might have played a bit more, but I certainly wouldn't have him as first choice. I don't think he's anywhere near ready.
Go back in January is my summarisation. Waste of a wage.
Yeah, you need to, and hopefully, if you can, try and find someone at the other end of the pitch to help us out. Robbie McKenzie, I think he's one of them. Does exactly what he says on the tin type players, and he's had to play probably 3 positions already since he's come back. Very rarely has a bad game. He's not, going to pull up trees in terms of driving us forward and creating chances, etc. But you pretty much know if you put him somewhere, he's a solid 7 out of 10 every week. I think would be my assumption on him. Dom Jeffries, Reece, because we've only really seen him in the last sort of month, 6 weeks after some frustrating injury problems at the start of the campaign.
Yeah, he annoys me because he looks too much like O'Keefe. I got the two of them confused about 15 times yesterday.
Yeah, I did on Tuesday. Exactly right.
Glad it's not just me. No, I think he's got something about him. I think what he does give us in this team we've got at the moment, he gives us a bit of legs in midfield, which we know that O'Keefe, sort of McDonald, Williams lack. So I think there is a place for him. Listen, he's young, he's raw. He's not perfect in everything he does. He's a little bit rash sometimes. He picked up an early booking, didn't he, on Tuesday? But again, I think there is something there to work with. I can see why Harris has signed him, but the problem is that he's one that, we've signed him with good potential, but unfortunately potential isn't what we need right now. We need players that are going to stop us getting relegated out of the Football League. Do I think he can contribute to that? Yes, I do. I think he's got enough, but I think there's a lot more to come from him still, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Jack, I'll give you Ryan Law.
I think he's quite, from what I've seen of him, quite frustrating. I don't think he's particularly great defensively. And as much as I don't think Tutonda is a good footballer, he gives you more going forward than Law. So I think that probably isn't the greatest indictment of him, that I probably would start Tutonda over him. My
thing for me, and it's along the similar lines, is in the modern game, you have to be quick as a fullback. I don't think he's got enough pace to be a modern day fullback. I think, again, if you could probably put I'd say he's probably slightly better defensively than David Tutonda, but Tutonda's pace and trying to get over the halfway line, which is what we desperately need players to do at the moment, is what you try and amalgamate the two, wouldn't you? But it's not great if they're the two options and we're not sure who's the better of the two.
No.
Reece, this player was given, pelters, quite frankly, when we signed him. Neil Harris's press conference saying about he kept an eye on him for 4 weeks, I don't think helped him at the time. What have you made of Lewis Walker? I think he's done a lot better than people thought he would, to be fair.
I think Jack just briefly mentioned him. I think he summed it up quite well. Like we expected, he's not going to come in and score us a load of goals. He's not that type of player. I must confess, I've not been to the Papa John's games, so I've not actually seen any of his goals. But what I would give to, like Jack says, 1, he works hard. 2, he's not as big as Mandron, but he competes and he's a willing runner in behind. And I think with a team like us that's struggling for goals, I would prioritise someone that's going to run in behind over what Mandron actually gives us. I think there's a place for him. He's warm to me, despite the fact he's not scored bundles of goals. I do look at him play, and I do think, I'm not going to sit there slagging you off because you're trying to do the right things. Whether he's capable of, he missed a really, really good chance yesterday to equalise. But yeah, there are things I like about him. There are, but whether he's actually good enough to play at the level is a different matter.
We've scored 14 goals, haven't we, in all competitions, and he's got 3 of them. So what's that? It's about 30%. So, beggars can't be choosers and all that at the end of the day. No, I've been to both of them trophy games, and I thought he took all his goals really well. I'm not saying, like you've said, he's not going to score us 15, 20 league goals. Certainly not this season. Trying to remember him now. First one was, drifted off his man at the far post and bottom slid it in the bottom corner. The last one was a poacher's goal. That was against Brighton. Managed to get himself on the inner saying at the far post. And I think the header against Colchester was really, really good. Again, Will Wright delivery, but just got in front of his man and planted a really good header into the far corner. So I think there's certainly more there to work with than what we originally thought when he arrived in the summer. Who's next? Probably the most frustrating player of the summer signings for me, Jack GITBTV. He's got loads of ability. You can see it all the time, but like Reece alluded to, Northampton, and that's not the only game. Just constantly makes the wrong decision for me.
Yeah. I would say for the games I've seen him in, you forget that he's even playing. Is probably what I would say. He'll make the wrong. He won't take a man on. I mean, you're going to come on to him, but Jordan Green's got all the endeavour in the world, and tries hard and tries to go past his man. But he's an athlete playing football, in my opinion. Whereas Adelakun looks like a footballer that just. He doesn't look asked enough is probably what I would say, and he keeps making the wrong decisions. So, again, if you could take Jordan Green and Adelakun's best attributes and put them together, you've got a
We'd
decent
win the
winger.
league, wouldn't we? Yeah, obviously you've covered both of them. Who have we got next?
Cash kit, maybe.
Done Jordan Green, and that's what I was going to say. And unfortunately, Reece's best game was probably as a right back against Swindon.
Yeah.
And he was very,
Not
very
wrong
good defensively.
He was. Yeah, but like I say, just too wasteful in possession. Green, I've got to be honest, I'm not a fan at all. I think at the start and during the summer and stuff, when I see him in the friendlies and stuff, he look really, really bright. Maybe a player trying to earn a contract at the level to get his second chance. But since the first couple of games of the season, I think he's been dreadful. Every time he gets the ball, he seems more interested in throwing himself to the floor than actually trying to make something happen, which is probably partly why when he does get fouled, he doesn't get decisions because every time he gets the ball, he ends up on the deck. And like yesterday, at least with Adelakun, he was wasteful with the ball he got. I don't even recall Green getting into the game yesterday. So I was gobsmacked when I see a picture on Instagram. He'd been given man of the match, hadn't he?
Yeah, I think that got met with a little bit of surprise in the Rainham, to be fair. To be fair, I thought there was a couple of good bits from Green yesterday. There was one, I think, a driving run first half, and he got it out wide, and then we wasted the chance. I think it probably was Adelakun. And he had that effort straight away at the start of the second half, didn't he? Where he spun his man and smashed one. I don't think it missed the far post by much. Obviously, we're down the other end, but it's interesting you've mentioned pre-season because, and I've said this on the last episode, pre-season, we went up against Luton, we went up against Portsmouth, we went up against Palace. I think that was 3 games back to back. And Neil Harris kept talking about, I want to play different types of opposition. I want to play Dovers, Folkestone, Southends, where you're going to have more ball. I want to play against, I think he said Southend he wanted to play a team where it would probably be 50-50. It was more like a league game. And then he said, we're going to play teams like Palace, Luton, Portsmouth, where you're going to have to sit in and defend and play on the break. I thought Jordan Green was almost unplayable second half against Palace.
He's got himself a contract and decided to. I think we saw the best of him.
Potentially, and I hope that's not correct, but and the proof's in the pudding, like anything. One player, if we're desperately clutching onto some straws, who was very good in the summer, has been injured for ages, is Ollie Lee. Can Ollie Lee potentially improve this 11? I've just got off on a bit of a tangent before we look at the rest of the summer signings because we've not got a player. The closest we probably got is Ben Reeves, and he's injury prone, unfortunately, and he doesn't really contribute goals for all his ability on the ball. Ollie Lee was very productive in the summer. Ollie Lee's been very productive for us over 2 seasons, playing as a number 10. Can Ollie Lee not save our season, but certainly improve it? Jack?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, we've got 6 goals, mate. So So yes, yeah. If he can't, then he needs to stop playing football. Frankly, we've actually got quite a decent midfield when it's fit, is what I would say. But then still can't put the ball in the back of the net. So I don't know if he's going to have to pop up some goals. I guess is the long and short of it, which he can do. But then he played him in defensive midfield in League One. So another example of Harris maybe being inept or just felt he needed to because he had no one else.
I think he said, to be fairness to Neil on that, he did say it's because he didn't have anyone else available, did he, at the time? So we've had to do it. But he was certainly very good in the summer, and I know that he's desperately clinging on to, the last grain of hope. Where did we get to? We've done Jordan Green, we've done Hagi Badelican. Next, Reece, probably the best summer signing so far, Elkan Baggott.
Yeah, it's similar to Wright, to be honest. He's got erratic moments in him, but in Baggott's case, that comes through an experience. But again, a bit like Wright as well, one of our bigger goal threats.
He's the top goal scorer, isn't he?
Again, is
he is in the league, yeah.
Which says it all. But no, he's had a couple of iffy games, which you'd expect of someone of his age. Yeah. But he's had a couple of really, really good games as well. And yeah, he's in the main, he's been good. I've got a lot of time for him. He's one of the more likable players in our bunches for sure.
I think he would win Young Player of the Year at the moment, is what I would say, based on right this very second.
He'd probably win Knee Player of the Year because all the Indonesian fans are probably going to vote for him.
There were some in the Rainamans yesterday. I walked out. There was some in the Rainamans yesterday. They'd had a great time in the club shop. Trade must have gone through the roof yesterday. So we surely can afford a striker now, regardless of the time.
They got a club shop,
bags and bags of merchandise. Really? Got that little one in the Gordon Road. They must have stripped it, to be fair to them. They had bags of stuff.
You need to put Elkan Baggott in the title of this video, mate. We'll get thousands of views.
I tried it. I did it on mine when he scored against Stevenage and Barrow, and I was like, oh, I've got 1,800 views, brilliant. I looked at German Gills, 22,000. I was like, what has he done? How's he managed that? Absolutely tucked me up, brilliant. So yeah, I've got to copy and paste what he puts in his descriptions of videos. Anyway, Scott Cashkit, I'm going to let you talk about him, Jack, because you was very much on the fence at best when we signed him, and you've already mentioned in regards of what he offers and doesn't offer.
A lot of people were very happy with the signing of him, and without looking properly into him, when I made past comment in terms of his previous positions, shall we say, that he's played in, I saw striker and I saw a goal 1 in every 7 games, I think it was, something like that, which to me doesn't make for good reading. But then when you actually factor
makes him prolific in our currency.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I would say if you looked at his history of where he's played, i.e. winger, second striker, and his history in League Two, he did actually look like probably on paper our best signing, if not one of the better signings. He's been injured, is what I would say. He's flattered to deceive. He's quite frustrated in the sense that the games I've seen and the highlights I've seen, he does miss some pretty gilt-edged chances. I wouldn't say they're absolute sitters, but he has missed quite a few where
Stevenage at home was an absolute sitter.
Oh yeah, blimey, yeah. But there are others where you think like filed away, where he's in behind. You just think, right, someone who's a bit more clinical, a bit more composed, and a bit more confident would have put that in the back of the net. So I think that's an example of the fact that with Harris at the moment and without a different voice potentially, confidence is very, very low in the players, which they, to be fair, they've got to find in themselves to try and get them out of this. I mean, like you said in an interview the other day, he can only do so much. So they do need to start doing better. And as I've alluded to, that they are, in my opinion, they're a better squad than where they are in the league, and we have a better budget than where we are in the league right now. So everything needs to be improved, which is pretty obvious.
Yeah. No, I think that sums it up pretty well. The final one I'm going to take is Jake Turner, the goalkeeper. I think it's been absolutely fine. He's not played loads because of Glenn Morris, but I've seen him in all the cup games.
Did great the other night.
Yeah, I don't think he's had a bad game. Even in the shootout, I know he's not saved one, but he's done enough moving on his line that led to, I think it was the fella in the bar, which ultimately won us the shootout.
Just on that, mate. Just on that, I've made a note here about Brentford. Obviously we had 19% possession and 1 shot, which is pretty much in keeping with the rest of the season, but we got the job done. But that aside, I said on Twitter that I think Tuesday was the best of the club. I think we've got a great set of fans. I genuinely do. I think we're a good laugh. That showed when we didn't have the ball and kept singing about it, and so the gallows humour. But the support was fantastic. Like there's some Brentford fans on Twitter that said that we've made more noise than any Premier League team that's been there. And I think we took more fans as well than any Premier League team has done so far, because of the fact they obviously didn't sell as many tickets for the home end, so they gave us more away ones. But I think if the new chap that's potentially buying the club saw that on Tuesday, that to me is the potential of this football club. Just how we were as fans, the support, just we got a lucky. We made our own luck to a degree, but it was very lucky, to be fair. But I think that was that was the best of the club, and I think with Brentford that, you know, people say, oh, you know, better the devil you know, what's going to happen without Scully? Well, you know, we could do a Brentford. Let's dream.
Yeah, and it has come full circle with Mr. Scully as well, hasn't it? So it's probably a nice point for him to move on, because we were struggling at the bottom end of League Two or Division 4 or whatever it was called back in the mid-90s, and that's where we are now. So
I've put here, mate, he's my description of him is he's an analog chairman in a digital era. It's time to go. It is, and I'm sure he recognises that by the fact he's selling the club supposedly for a lot less money than what he's been offered in the past, supposedly. Yeah, we've been our most successful under him. There's no denying that. But we're back where we started, and I think history will show that the first 10 years were brilliant. He invested money in the club that was made through transfers. For whatever reason, that stopped. Partly ITV Digital, but you know, since that point, we've been in a general decline, unfortunately, for Reece, and the entire time he supported the club. And you know, apathy's fed into the fan base. Many don't come anymore. And I just think that, like I've said before, we desperately need this sale to happen, because I really do fear that we might slip into the conference without it. And if we do, I don't think we'll come back anytime soon. You know, Wrexham are a much bigger club than we are, and it's taken them 15 years and counting. So
I see a tweet this afternoon before we started recording. It said that two teams that were in League Two last season could be in National League North next season. Oldham and Scunthorpe are both in the bottom four in that division. That's the warning that we have to heed, I think.
I agree. It just when clubs are on a downwards spiral, it's very hard to get out of it, and that's where we are. And to me, that's partly that downward spiral is partly now because of the manager, and there's an element of me that thinks we should potentially change, but I'm not completely Harris out, but I'm definitely not Harrising. So I think that probably sums up most of the fan base as well.
Yeah, and like Reece said, he made a good point. Can we afford to sack him? That's the thing as well.
I don't think
probably not.
No.
Right. Have you boys got anything else you want to add before we wrap this up? Or have we covered everything that we needed to cover?
I think in terms of our season, I think the next two games are massive. We've got teams down the lower ends, haven't we, I believe?
Newport Saturday.
And I can't remember, it was the week after that, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere else in the bottom half.
Let's have a quick look. Fixtures.
We've got Fylde tomorrow night.
Got Fylde Tuesday night in the Cup. We then go to Newport next Saturday, and then it's the rearranged Crawley game, and they're a different Crawley town to what we'd have probably played when the original fixture.
Is that actually happening, Matt? I thought I saw that was postponed again. I don't know why. I might have got that completely wrong. Or it might be meant to have happened.
To be honest, at the moment, because they're absolutely flying. And then it's Salford at home, Bradford at home,
nice,
Stockport away, and Wolverhampton away. That takes us up to Christmas. So, yeah, I'd say that if Crawley does go ahead, then Newport and Crawley are absolutely huge, because we'll struggle to get points against Salford, Bradford and Stockport, I'd imagine. But at least we've got the Goalfest to look forward to at Molineux, between the worst scoring team in League Two and the worst scoring team in the Premier League.
Yeah, disappointed we didn't get someone like, well, a new ground. I've been to Wolves twice to an aggregate score of 10-0, so that wasn't the best draw to have come out.
Yeah, I think we was playing for United, weren't we? It's the only team we've not played competitively. So,
other than Forest Green, mate, actually, they're the other one.
I meant in the draw. Sorry.
Oh, in the draw, yeah.
In the draw, yeah. So
yeah. But you know, don't take nothing away from the club. They've been fantastic in the cup. Well, apart from in the League Cup. It'd be an interesting one. Just on the last point, what would happen? We've said obviously we can't afford to sack him, but if we lose tomorrow night to Fylde, you know, what then?
Well, yeah, the pressure keeps growing, and again, because we can all say that there's mitigating circumstances, but like Reece and you and I've said, not winning enough football matches, not scoring enough goals, not getting enough points, and Fylde would be another big cross against his name.
We'll be right Tuesday because it can go to penalties. So
I have said that. we're all right at penalties. We're absolutely superb at penalties. Although Neil did get it slightly wrong when he said we've not missed one this season. Josh Chambers did miss one against Colchester, but let's not dwell on the negatives because there's far too many, to be quite frank. Boys, it's been a real pleasure again, as always. Pleasure's probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean. I enjoy talking to you. One of these we'll do, and we'll be talking about being in the playoffs, and we'll have a new owner. We'll be flying. We'll have signed loads of players.
Next one will be positive, mate.
Can't be much worse, can it? Gills fans, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed talking about it. We wish we could bring you more positive content, but we can only talk about what's going on in and around the football club, both on and off the pitch. Please like, please subscribe, please keep sharing. I will be back later in the week with a Newport fan to preview our visit to Wales next Saturday. But until next time, up the Gills.